Lesson 7.1. So this is the new unit called Systems of Equations, Absolute Values, and the Inequalities lesson. So 7.1, 7.2, 7.3, absolute values, you do need to know this for 30-1. You'll see this come up. So what you're doing is there are rules. So whenever we look at temperature changes, we want to see how far it's traveled, so we can use absolutes to do that. So absolutes are these two brackets that change negative values into positive values. So for example, if I want to figure out what the temperature has changed from -19 to 22 degrees, I'd put an absolute value bracket around -19. And then I would add 22 degrees. What an absolute bracket does is it changes the negative value to a positive value. So then it becomes 19 plus 22. So the temperature change has been 41 degrees Celsius. So absolutes, whenever you have a positive value, it stays positive. 0 stays 0, but negatives become positives in absolutes. So what we're doing is, if we're saying we're starting at 0 and going to -5, what -5 in absolute means is what is the distance between those two values. What's the distance? Well, the distance is 5 units, which is why it becomes +5. So an absolute bracket is, what we want to remember is that there's a positive value and a negative value that's hidden underneath. So whenever we're taking the square root of x squared, we actually have to do positive negative of x. So for example, number 1, when we have the absolute of 9, we get 9. The absolute of -12 becomes +12. So only negatives within absolute brackets change to positive. So they're just like brackets. Example number 2, we want to order it from least to greatest. So we want to start with 3.5 becomes 3.5. Absolute doesn't change a positive. -2 is not an absolute, so it's going to stay as -2. Then -5.75 in absolutes becomes +5.75. 1.05 stays as it is because there's no absolutes. And then we're going to use our calculator. 13 divided by 4 is 3.25, and it becomes +3.25. Then absolute of -0.5 becomes 0.5. -1.25 stays as it is. And -3 1/3 becomes +3 plus 0.333. So those are repeating values. Okay, so once I've changed them, I'm going to order them from least to greatest. So our smallest value is -2. Then we have -1.25. Then our next smallest value is 0.5. So that would be the absolute of -0.5. We like to write it in the form that it started in. So what I did in the second line here was just to help me figure it out. But once I have it figured out, I do need to write what I was given in the right order. So that's this one right here. And then our next value is 1.05. Then we have 3.25. So that is the absolute of -13/4. Then we have the absolute of -3 1/3. Then we have the absolute of 3.5. And then finally, we have the absolute of -5.75. Okay, so this is from least to greatest that we just wrote our numbers in. So always evaluate what's inside the bracket first before you move outside of the brackets. Example number 3, the absolute of -4 is +4. Subtract the absolute of -3 is +3. 4 minus 3 is 1. Then we have to evaluate, we treat it like brackets. Negative 12 plus 8 is, in absolutes, negative 4. And the absolute of negative 4 becomes positive 4. And then we have 12 times negative 3, which is negative 36, plus 5 squared is 25. So that's going to become negative 11 within absolutes, which becomes positive 11. Example number 4, Wesley volunteers at a local hospital because he is interested in a career of healthcare. On one day, he takes an elevator from the 1st floor to the 6th floor. So he goes from the 1st to the 6th. So that means he is going plus 5 floors. Then we're going from the 6th floor, sends him down to the 2nd floor. And then from the 2nd floor, we're going to the 4th floor. And then it says we go down to the 1st floor. So from the 4th floor, we go down to the 1st floor. So first of all, we need to figure out what is the total change. So how many total floors did he travel on? So we're going to do the absolute of each one. So total change is where we take the absolute of each one. So we're going to take 1 to 6 was going plus 5 up. Plus, we're going to add, so total just means add between them. From 6 to 2, we went down 4 floors. Plus, from 2 to 4, we went up 2 floors. And from 4 to 1, we went down 3 floors. So that means we're going to go 5 plus the absolute of negative 4 is 4, plus the absolute of positive 2 is 2, plus the absolute of negative 3 is 3. So if we add all those together, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, we get 14 floor change, total change. And then net change just means how far is he from his starting position. So we ended up on the first floor, and we started on the first floor. So if we subtract those two values, we get 0. So that is our net change. How far is he from his starting position? Well, if we started from the first floor, ended on the first floor, we had 0 net change. Example number 5, it says the Yukon Quest dog sled runs from Fairbank, Alaska to Whitehorse, Yukon Territory, a distance of more than 1,000 miles. It lasts for 2 weeks. The elevation at Fairbanks is 440, and the elevation at Whitehorse is 2,089. Net change in the elevation from Fairbanks to Whitehorse. So Fairbanks, we know we were at the Fairbanks, we are at 2,000. Oh, sorry, Whitehorse, we are at 2,089, and at Fairbanks, we are at 440. So what we can do is we can subtract these two values, and order doesn't matter when it comes to absolutes. So we're just going to put those in absolute values. So we're finding out what 440 minus 2,089 is, and that's going to be absolute of negative 1,649. And so that's equal to positive 1,649, and that's in feet. So that's our net change. Now we want to figure out the total change, so we have to actually find the change in each set. So we want to start at Fairbanks. which is 440, and subtract where we get to central, which is 935. Now we're going to add central, which is 935, and the elevation change to the next city. Circle City is 597. And then from Circle City 597, we're subtracting Dawson City, which is 1050, and we're adding 1050, which is Dawson City, and we're subtracting our last stop, which is at Whitehorse, which is 2089. So we want to find out what each of these numbers are, and then we're going to add up all the answers. So 440 subtract 935, we get the absolute of negative 495. 935, we are subtracting 597, and we get 338. 597, subtract 1050, we get negative 453. And finally, 1050, subtract 2089, we have negative 1039. So now we have to just add the numbers up. The absolutes make all the negatives become positive. And we should get that the total the total change was 2,325 feet. When we add up all the numbers, remember all the negatives become positive. And then our absolute task is just saying which ones are true and which ones are false. Well, absolute 7 is equal to 7. So both of them would equal 7. So this one is true. For B, 3 minus 6 would be negative 3. And the absolute of negative 3 is positive 3. So those are not equal, so that is false. 2 minus 4 equals positive 2 when we go through the absolute. 2 minus 4 is negative 2. Well, negative 2 is not equal to 2, so that one is false as well. And our last one, we have 5 minus 32 in absolutes, and that's equal to 27. 5 minus 32 would be negative 27. And then the absolute of negative 27 is 27, so that is true. Okay, so that is your day 1. So that is lesson 7.1, absolute value. So if you want to try some homework questions, you can do the day 1 homework questions and then practice that. So just remember that